Greetings, clubbers, and welcome to another edition of Clobby'S Comics Corner Spinner Rack Time Machine. This is March, week 4, 1972, even though by the time you see this, it will already be April the 3rd, and I'm sorry. It's still covering a week. It's late, all kinds of things going on. I really do apologize for it, and the Quick Bits video will follow the next day. Then I'll start April and try to get April on time, I hope. But anyway, thank you for being here. And let us get started. Of course, as in case you don't know, the Spinner Rack Time Machine is my time machine. It is a TARDIS in the shape of a time machine, of a early 70s spinner rack, a time machine that I have turned into a comic book shop. We go back 50 years to the week. And I act as if it's our local comic shop, as you would at your local comic shop with your folder. And I pick out anywhere from 8 to 10, or give or take, comics that came out that very week. And I don't go deep dive them or anything. I just show you basically what I chose. And then I show you, I just talk a little bit about them, what's going on. And then, of course, the next day, I'll, on the Quick Bits follow-up video, which will be a little bit shorter, I just show you some of the ones that I did not choose. So here we go. Recapping what we've done so far in March. March week 1. I'll just show these quickly, then we'll get on to my selections for week 4. Just show you just a quick visual rundown of the many titles that I had in my folder. Yes, I know they didn't really have folders back then. That was week 1, and then now week 2. But if they did, well, maybe some of the few comic shops that actually existed in 1972 had pull lists. I don't know. Not in my neck of the woods. Of course, again, that was 50 years from me. 50 years ago, I was pretty young. And there's week 3. Just to show these really quickly. And now on to week 4 of March. And again, I know it's late. I'm sorry for this video being late. Hopefully it won't that'll happen again. But anyway, here we go. Our first selection is Luke Cage, Hero for Hire #1. Yes, indeed, a landmark sensational origin issue. The beginnings of a legendary Marvel hero who turns 50 this week in terms of his creation. Later to be known, of course, as Power Man, and to become a very famous Marvel hero, later to team up with Iron Fist, of course. I'm a big fan of Luke Cage. I'm a big fan of Power Man. And this was something. This is right on my pull list, #1. Again, some landmarks this week. Story, of course, by Roy Thomas. Art, George Tuska and Billy Graham. Billy Graham was an excellent penciler on Black Panther and some other things at the time. Didn't do a lot of work in comics, but brilliant artist. A cover, of course, by the great John Romita. So again, all hail Luke Cage, Hero for Hire, later to be Power Man. Great character, legendary character, and a good start. Marvel Tales #35, which is a reprint, of course, from Amazing Spider-Man #49. Story by Stanley, art John Romita, the Lee Romita era, and a classic era it was. And we have a great cover by the master Gil Kane with inks by Vince Coletta, but we don't hold that against it. Great stuff. Marvel Tales, reprinting some Spidey there. Raw Kid 100, a landmark release because it's a 100 issue. With a new story in there by Larry Lieber and George Russos, or at least I don't think they were really working at Marvel at the time. I think maybe it was a backlog story. I couldn't find anything about it being a reprint. Art by Larry Lieber and George Russos, of course, with a Larry Lieber cover that looks very Kirby-ish to me. But Lieber did that. Lieber did kind of draw like Kirby, of course, Larry being Stan's brother. who's still with us, I believe, which is nice. Sergeant Fury and his Howling Commandos, number 99. Story, Roy Thomas, art, Dick Ayers and John Tartaglione, and with another nifty cover by the great John Severin. Great stuff. Superman's pal, Jimmy Olsen, number 149. Story and art by John Albano, Jose Delbo, Bob Oxner on the first story. Second story is a reprint from Police Comics, and of course by the great Jack Cole. That would be a Plastic Man classic, of course, with a Bob Oxner cover. It's you'll note that this is after this is Jimmy Olsen. I guess I'd have to say AJ after Jack Kirby left the book. Another reprint book, X-Men 76, which was X-Men was brought back as a reprint title for a good while there, as you may know. So yes, X-Men 76, reprinting X-Men number 28. Story, Roy Thomas, art, Warner Roth, John Tartaglione, with a cover by the two greats, Gil Kane and Joe Sinnott. Strange Adventures, Strange Adventures 236. This one is chock full of reprints, as many of these types of books were. Of course, reprinting a lot of stuff from the earlier mystery and space titles. Strange Adventures 36 consists of no less than 4 reprints by the likes of France E. Huron, Carmen Infantino, Joe Giella, Gardner Fox, Murphy Anderson, Otto Bender, Manny Stallman, John Gianna, and Sid Green. And, of course, a great cover by Murphy Anderson. Got some Star Rovers, some other science fiction stories, and one of my favorite guys, Adam Strange. Cool reprint stuff. Reprints, but really cool reprints, of course, as many are. Superman's Girlfriend, Lois Lane, number 122. First story, Robert Kanigher, John Rosenberger, Vinnie Coletta, with Murphy Anderson. It should be noted, all he does is like Murphy Anderson would do the Superman heads because, well, they didn't really like any other artists or inkers doing Superman's head in a lot of the comics at that point. They even did that to Kirby sometimes. Story art 2, E. Nelson Bridwell, the Human DC Encyclopedia, the DC Lore Encyclopedia he is. Kurt Swan, George Klein. Story art 3, a reprint from Lois Lane 35, Jerry Siegel, Kurt Swan, George Klein, with a Bob Oxner cover. Fantastic Four, number 123. Story, Stanley, art, John Buscema and Joe Sinnott, with a Sal Buscema cover. So Sal, early Sal stuff, I would say. He's kind of rare. You see him did a lot. He didn't do a lot. Sal was never one for doing a lot of cover work, but I've always liked this cover. So good on Sal for that. Good old Sal Buscema. Marvel Spotlight on Werewolf by Night, number 4. Story, Jerry Conway, art, the extraordinary Mike Plug, who also did the cover. I love some Plug, old Plug 70 stuff. Again, one of those great artists who moved on from comics, and of course he's big in the movie business, storyboards, things like that. But he was is a great artist still to this day. So always enjoy seeing some Plug work. The Outlaw Kid, number 2. Story, Mike Frederick, Dick Ayers, George Russos. Story and art, that is, on the first story, that is. And story 2, reprint, Western Outlaws and Sheriffs, number 82. I'm not sure who wrote it, but Vernon Hinkle, Joe Mannielly on the art, the late Joe Mannielly, and they're all late these days. Unfortunately, this has got a really nice Gil Kane cover. Superboy, number 186. Story art 1, Leo Dorfman, Bob Brown, Murphy Anderson. Story art 2, a reprint from House of Mystery 157, Dave Wood, Jim Mooney. And story art 3, couldn't track down the writer, Bob Brown, Murphy Anderson on the art chores, and it sports a Nick Cardy cover. Gotta love some Cardy covers. Yes, indeed. Action Comics number 412. Story and art by Cary Bates, Kurt Swan, and Murphy Anderson. One of my favorite creative teams on Superman stories ever. Yes, and I love that Swanderson team on the art. Great stuff. Story art 2, Cary Bates, John Calnan, and Murphy Anderson. Story art 3 is a reprint from House of Secrets number 62. Bob Haney, Earth B. Bob Haney, Mr. Continuity. Art Elias, and a cover by the great Nick Cardy. Adventure Comics number 419. Story and art, John Albano, Tony DeZuniga, with inks by Bob Oxner. Story art 2, Dennis O'Neill, Alex Toth. Yes, that's got to be the probably the maybe this Black Canary story or the Zatanna story. I forget which. I've got a man backwards. Lynn Wein, Dick Giordano on story art 3, and story art 4 is a reprint from Phantom Stranger number 3 by John Broome, Carmen Infantino, and Frank Giacoia. And story art 5, reprint from Strange Adventures 191. Earth B. Bob Haney and Howard Purcell on those chores, and the art on the cover by Bob Oxner. Detective Comics number 423. First story, Frank Robbins, Bob Brown, and Dick Giordano. Second is a reprint from Big Town number 15. It could not find a writer. Erwin Hassan on the art. Frank Robbins and Don Heck on the third story, and of course the reprint from Gangbusters number 26. Only information is the art, John Letty, but the cover is just one of my favorite of the great Michael Kaluta, one of the greats of that era, and I love his covers. So many great covers by him, and this being one of them. Great Detective Comics number 423. And finally, Tarzan of the Apes, number 208. But second DC issue, just like I said last month, that I had to tack on this month because I forgot about the last month. This was when Gold Key's Tarzan run, somehow the Edgar Rice Burroughs estate made a deal with DC to leave Western publications or Dell or Gold Key. But they kept up the numbering. They 207 kept it up, so the 206 issues were at Dell and Gold Key or whatever. And then starting at DC, instead of just calling it number one, the first one, 207 was first DC issue. So this is second DC issue. At this point, the great Joe Kubert is adapting Edgar Rice Burroughs' first book, Tarzan of the Apes. There is a reprint from a 1932 Hal Foster strip, which is interesting and great stuff. Hal Foster's Tarzan, of course, terrific. The great Hal Foster, he's a legendary Prince Valiant strip artist. Third story, Marv Wolfman and Gray Morrow. That's a John Carter story. They were adapting a lot of Edgar Rice Burroughs in there. And a great cover by, of course, the extraordinary Joe Kubert. Interesting side note for those who know their Tarzan writers. The great science fiction author Philip Jose Farmer, who was also a Tarzan expert and wrote a great book called Tarzan Alive, amongst other things. This was just a few months before Tarzan Alive came out. He has a letter printed in this comic book because apparently Joe Kubert sent him some copies of the stats of the issue 1, because he was adapting the Edgar Rice Burroughs' first book of Tarzan. And Philip Jose Farmer, has a letter printed in this, which I thought was crazy. And I saw that when I was doing my research, because I don't have this issue, in the Grand Comics database, which is a great research tool. And a buddy of mine found it. He has the issue, and he sent me, shout out to Minimus Claude, he sent me a copy of the letter by Philip Jose Farmer. It's like, wow, man, that's a big name to be printed in a letters column. But I like to watch old letters columns for that reason anyway. So anyway, thank you all so much for being here today. We'll wrap it up for March 1972. Even though we're into April, again, I apologize about that. Thank you all for being here. If you want to see any of my other Spinner Rack Time Machine videos, There is a link in my description below where you can find them all, and a link to my source, which of course is Mike's Amazing World blog, of course. And as you can see, a whole lot of comics used to come out back then, and you can find it all right there. And of course, my next video will talk a little bit more about the ones that got away that I did not pick for my folder. But I want to thank you all, as always. A big shout out to my wonderful first officer, the amazing R.M. Briggs, for this nifty intro outro she made for me. Until then, thank you so much, and clubber on, clubbers.